just give a little bit of background very, very quickly, and then we've got some phenomenal guests to kind of talk it through with us and give it a little bit of context, really. So Wirecard, of course, is a payments processor used by some of the most well-known fintechs in the UK. Former clients include the likes of Monzo and Revolut, and today some of our guests like Curve and Equals and Soldo are clients, as well as folks like Anna Money and Pocket and a few other well-known companies. If you're using a card from one of these fintechs, there's a good chance that Wirecard Solutions or Wirecard AG is somewhere in the background making the magic happen. Now, that may sound scary that there's a number of companies behind the scenes. Wait a minute, this isn't my fintech, there's somebody else providing it. But actually, these types of companies have enabled a wave of innovation in the last few years. And a lot of the fintechs that have come to market are really crediting this way of bringing new fintech solutions as being a part of the reason why they've been successful. But let's just have a look at a timeline, shall we? As early as 2008, a German shareholder association published suggestions of Wirecard balance sheet irregularities. Ernst & Young were appointed to conduct a special risk audit. In 2011 through 2014, Wirecard raised more than 500 million euros and started buying up payments companies. And in 2015, the FT began to look at the inconsistency of those group accounts. In 2017, though, Ernst & Young gave Wirecard a clean audit. And in October 2019, the FT published documents indicating that profits in Wirecard units were fraudulently inflated. Roll the clock forward to April 28th, 2020, and a KPMG audit report is published. The firm says it cannot verify that these arrangements responsible for the lion's share of Wirecard's profits are reported as being genuine. In June the 5th, police searched Wirecard's offices in Munich. On June the 18th, Wirecard was supposed to publish audited accounts that instead declared 1.9 billion euros was missing. On the 19th of June, the Wirecard CEO then resigned. And on the 22nd of June, Wirecard acknowledged potential accounting fraud. The CEO is then arrested on suspicion of false accounting and market manipulation. On the 25th of June, Wirecard states that they will file for insolvency. And on the 26th of June, the FCA in the United Kingdom closed down Wirecard UK, which had a major impact on UK users, such as, of course, Soldo, Curve, and many others. However, on the 29th of June, the FCA announced that Wirecard could resume issuing e-money and providing payment services in the UK. And this started again from yesterday, the 30th of June. So here we are on the 1st of July, and we have some incredible guests with us. So rather than just recounting the facts, we wanted to speak to those in fintech and basically just to ask what's been going on. It must have been really hard being some of these folks. So first up is Natalie Oosterman. I hope I've said your name right, Natalie, who's the CEO. Yes, COO over at Curve. How are you doing? How have you survived the last 4 days?
Well, if anybody has seen the post by our CEO and founder, Shahar Bialik, about the weekend we had post this announcement that we were going to be shut down on Friday with no clear view of when we'd be turned back on, you'll know that it's been a very wild ride for us indeed. Just to give a personal account of how it happened for me, I was out running without my phone. And when I got back, I picked up my phone and it was buzzing like crazy in my hand. The screen wasn't on. And I couldn't understand. I thought there was a malfunction in the phone. It was the number of messages I was getting through, not only from the company, but everywhere. And the first message I saw was a WhatsApp from MasterCard saying, "Are you okay?" And I thought, what's going on? So quickly called our legal counsel, and he said to me, in 3 hours, we're going to be shut down. You know, those are not the words that you want to hear, particularly since it was through no fault of our own. And had no indication whatsoever that Wirecard in the UK, we were told time and time again, separate entity will be okay. And so that was the big shock. And what ensued afterwards is really crisis management about what do we do? And the only thought we had in our minds is, how do we get the service back up and running? Another anecdote is, in the same week, again, very fintech, On the Wednesday, we announced a huge partnership with Samsung Pay for the Samsung Pay card. We were at the biggest high we could ever be. And then to realize our business has been shut down. All we could think is, we need to get back up for our customers. We need to get back up for our partners. How do we do this? And everything else was like just plowing through. How will we do this? And the decisions were made incredibly quickly and really focused. And hopefully we'll get into that.
Wow. I mean, what a roller coaster of a week from highs to lows. But the good news is you've not been alone. We're joined, of course, by Simon England, who's managing director over at Equals. Thanks for joining us, Simon. Have you been surviving as well?
It's been an interesting weekend, hasn't it? I think it's 96 hours that none of us will forget. Like Natalie said, we were just literally all hands to the pumps. We had people from every department of our business ploughing in, and most importantly, just speaking to customers. That's what we found was the critical path for this, keeping customers informed with any information that we were getting, and ensuring that we were doing everything we possibly could to kind of minimize any disturbance that they were having. But it's certainly one to remember.
Absolutely. And Darren Upson, who's VP for Small Business Europe at Soldo. Great to have you with us, Darren. I guess a weekend you'll never forget.
Yeah, you could say that. I mean, Friday morning, we were planning all sorts, and then all of a sudden my CEO has to jump onto another call because he receives a notification that it's likely that we're going to have to stop trading at 12:01. So that all took us aback slightly. But I think that, from these challenging times, you can really bring the best out in people. And I think that what we've managed to do with this is hopefully communicate in a very sincere way to our customers about the situation that we're in, but also make sure that we keep everyone, but we mobilize the troops and we get things done as quickly as possible to make sure that the business can get back up and running as quickly as possible. The concern for us, I think, is the fact that when we look at some of the smaller fintechs that are more dependent on Wirecard and some of the other solutions, I think they're going to be more impacted in the long term. And I think that's the more worrying thing for fintech in the UK.
Yeah, and of course we'll come back to the long-term implications, I think, of a lot of this stuff. But Natalie, you talked about your phone buzzing off the hook. I guess that answers how you found out. But I'm interested to know, kind of really what happened next. You've spoken to your legal counsel. Your phone is buzzing off the hook. What do you do, and how do you get the thing live and up and running? And who's speaking to customers, and what are they saying? What are you hearing from them?
Well, so the first thing is, running into the house, sweating because it was very hot on Friday. So, we ran back in. Obviously, we had a leadership call immediately and just broke it down into the component parts. We've grown very quickly. We have 300 employees now. We have a matrix structure, and that matrix structure really came into play right that morning. We had a point person. Our program manager, Kath, she did a fantastic job at bringing everybody together, and each one of us owned our bit of what we had to do. And literally, I can echo what Darren is saying. What could have been the worst day of my career ended up being one of the best, because I saw the best coming out of our employees to get to where we needed to be. And we literally just put our heads down. How are we going to do this? What are we going to do? And it happened so quickly. For myself personally, I was dealing with the customer communications part, and I immediately just put a Slack channel up, who's got to be on it, called everybody into that meeting, and immediately we took off and did not take the foot off of the gas. Still not even today, to be honest.
Indeed, I can only imagine. And thank you for making the time to speak to us. I mean, Darren, I'm interested from your perspective. When you found out what happened next, did you know what had actually happened? And did you know what you were going to do about it? And how do you get A, the customer comms sorted, and B, service running as soon as possible?
Well, it's an interesting one. So we're about 200 staff now, and we've got obviously owners for each of these different areas. But in this situation, it was the senior leadership team in the main that actually had to literally grab it by the scruff of the neck and get things sorted out. What we did here is, so just a little bit of a wind back. We were in a fairly fortunate position because actually 2 days prior to this announcement, we'd actually sent out a communication to all of our customers advising 60-day notice about the fact that we were MasterCard principal members. So actually that process, we had a 60-day window to actually complete the migration to become to move all of our customers from Wirecard over to Soldo. So the immediate action was, right, how do we shorten that process? Because we need to get our customers up and running as quickly as possible. So effectively, every single team came around and we built a plan to understand what we could do, what we had full control on, and what we needed third-party support on. And MasterCard did a phenomenal job in supporting us in this 100%. Process. We couldn't have achieved what we've done without MasterCard getting, really helping support us throughout the entire process. And also Wirecard UK as well. Wirecard UK have done a great job in terms of being really responsive and proactive to help us actually move this forwards. So it's not all about giving, Wirecard a kicking, because by far from that, actually they've done a great job for what they were able to do.
And I think that's interesting how immediately both Natalie and Simon echoed that point. I mean, Simon, do you want to give some context to what they were able to do to help you from a proactive standpoint?
Yeah, I think it's worth mentioning. I know at the top of the show you were mentioning the timeline. We were working with Newcastle Building Society for 11 years, which Wirecard acquired. So I think it's worth remembering that the issuing guys in the UK still are very much from that core of people, and they care about what they've been doing for us. And we saw that through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, when we had constant communication from them. We were on the phone, we were on email, we were on text, just trying to get regular updates from them so that we could then go back to our customers. And I think that shows kind of the strength in the proposition and how it works. And when it works well, it does work. And I think that the tricky bit was that all of us were flying blind from the perspective that it was difficult to get information out from other third parties. So you could only work with what you had, which was MasterCard. And I'll echo what Darren and Natalie said. They were fantastic throughout. You could pick up the phone and they were there. And we just wanted to ensure that everything that we knew, we were telling our customers. That's what it came down to. I think everyone on this call and everyone involved knows that most importantly, it was the customers that were affected. We all worked very, very long hours over the weekend, but we were doing that to ensure that the customers were being served and were being kept informed. It was easy to read a lot in the mainstream press that would have confused people.
Yeah, and I can imagine. It's interesting, you guys were sort of answering that as Amy Dobson, one of our live watchers, asked exactly that question. So shout out, Amy, thank you for asking. It seems like there's a hive mind here, all thinking the same things at the same time. I'm interested in that mainstream press and customer trust thing. You've all spoken about sort of dealing with customer communications. Natalie, I'm going to come to you first. Sure. There's two things from a Curve perspective. One is there's this mainstream narrative and customers speaking to you, but two, you were up and running quite quickly. Can you explain a little bit about how you did that?
I had a hard decision on Friday to make about what to communicate to customers. We also became a MasterCard principal member and had communicated that on June 28th, so Sunday, we would transfer everything over. We also subsequently got delayed in that and had sent an email to say that we were a bit delayed. That email was a bit forgotten. But we had an expectation that was set with our customers that we would be completely transferred by the 28th. That's on the issuing side, okay? So we knew we had to do that. What most people, as you said in your start, Simon, most customers didn't know that we also use, the way our platform works, because we're a platform, we become a merchant. So we were using Wirecard as an acquirer. I don't know if the two of you are using them as an acquirer, as an issuer. So we were using them for acquirer. I think probably one of Wirecard's largest customers because of the two side of the equation. And so even if we move the issuing, and let's say Wirecard was to go down always, we were always going to be stuck with that, if Wirecard stays shut, we would not be, even if we got over to MasterCard and issued our own cards, we would still be stuck on the merchant acquiring. And I couldn't, so we had to fix that over the weekend, which is not an easy thing to do. You had to select a new acquirer, negotiate, sign a contract, and then implement all in flight. We started to communicate that information only on Sunday, only because we didn't know how long that was going to take. But we couldn't give all the information out at once because of customer confusion. So it was it is, we were being transparent. Yes, we're going to move our issuing. What we didn't explain is we also had to move the acquiring over, or the card processing,
It's a lot to take somebody through, that you're both an issuer and an acquirer, and this is how you do the curve magic that you do in terms of the ability to change where something has been spent. And I guess communication is always such a hard thing. And I guess as well, the FCA came out and said that e-money, which is the regulation under which a lot of these cards are issued, is not protected under the FCS or FCAS protection scheme or insured. So how do you maintain consumer confidence? Because as we step back and look at this, I was speaking to the CEO of another fintech earlier today who said, when you look at this from from a Wirecard perspective or from any of these issuers, full service was resumed within 4 days, and 100% of funds appear to have credited to anybody who may have been struggling for those funds at any point. So that compares with FSCS, where you would get up to £85,000 within 7 days. So e-money appears to be relatively safe, but then at the same time, the FCA needs to come and clarify this point. Did that make things easier, harder, and how did you wade through that? Simon, you mentioned you were speaking to a lot of your customers, for instance.
Yeah, and I think that's where the mainstream press and the kind of it's quite a technical distinction between e-money and FCS protected products. I think when you actually boil it down, what e-money does afford you is a superb level of protection. One of the reasons that fintech is so big in the UK is because of the regulations and because of the way that the whole construct sits, in the fact that as long as you follow the guidelines, as long as the FCA are doing their job, which to their credit they did at the weekend, they ensured that it had been followed, you can be pretty much assured that your funds are safe. And I think, like you said, because when the restrictions were lifted and everything went back to normal, customers could see their funds were there. It does raise the question that people need to understand actually what these products are, how e-money works. And I think that is the bit that a lot of our customers have taken from this, which is to understand how financial products work. It's very easy to put stuff up and then kind of step away. But I think,
Simon, although it was unprecedented, I would say that it was locked up, right? Yeah. And I think that's a lot of the stories that came out was for those that were really reliant on that e-money account and couldn't access their money. I think was not a good step in the process. I wish it had been done differently.
Yeah, and I think we all wish it had been done differently, but I think because it was such an unprecedented event, I think hopefully the FCA have learned things from this. I think we've all learned things from this, and it just goes to show that, if we all work together as an industry, we can prevent things like this from happening.
Absolutely. I think, Simon, to your point, there's a question here from Chris McFeet, who's watching the live stream, and he says, crisis management is always admirable during chaos and disorder, but what have you guys learned about the foresight when assessing these risks and assumptions and plans in advance? I mean, Darren, you were talking before the show about sort of the larger organizations are able to get to MasterCard directly, and maybe there's some challenges on the smaller ones. Have you got any insights there, and in terms of the operational learnings around separately managed accounts and how those accounts are audited, et cetera, et cetera?
I mean, one of the nuances with this is the fact, there are many nuances around the way this has all fallen. But one of the benefits that we had so a big concern our customers had was, is my money frozen? Am I going to lose my money? That was the immediate worry that every single customer had as part of this process. And one of the things that was really unclear in terms of the way that the FCA dealt this activity and dealt with punishment on this was the fact that every single fintech that leveraged Wirecard was treated equally. So actually the same treatment, the same money being frozen, everything else, a lot of ambiguity got thrown into the mix on this. And so what we've been trying to do with our customers from day one was reassure them that, look, your money doesn't touch Wirecard in the sense of the segregated accounts we have are soldo segregated accounts. They don't touch Wirecard. We've never used them. We've only ever used them for issuing and to deal with a settlement. That's the only area that we've ever used them for. And it's really important that people understand that, because any of our customers that wanted their money back, because it's a fair question. If I run a business, I have working capital tied up with one of these solutions. I need access to that money. We were able to refund that money within the same day normally, or 24 hours at the very latest. So what we've been trying to do is do the right thing by our customers. That's been the big thing throughout this whole process. The people that suffer from this, those customers that from 12:01 p.m., all of a sudden their cards stop working. And so those customers that need access to that money, we had to make sure that they could be able to use or get access to their money however well, where unfortunately they've got people that are really in need of access to their money that just can't get access to it because it is frozen by the FCA. I mean, this is an unprecedented activity. So when it comes to crisis management, you know, you can look at downtime, you can look at various other things that you've got some level of control over. This is something that really, as a provider, you've got no real level of control over. You've got leverage, you've got conversation with the likes of MasterCard and everyone else. But these decisions normally take an inordinate amount of time to actually get moved from A to B. And actually what we were able to do, working in collaboration with the internal team, but also MasterCard, Wirecard, GPS, who's our processor, we were able to move really, really quickly to get stuff to happen. Now, we were down for the equivalent of 4 days. Now, including a weekend, that's still far too long, but 4 days to complete a full bin migration when you've only given notification 2 days prior to your customers about the fact that you're going to be doing this is a huge achievement. So we're proud of what we've done, but still the service that we provided to our customers, we're disappointed that actually they weren't able to use our product and be assured for the same level of service that they're used to. So when it comes to crisis management, yeah, crisis management always a difficult thing to manage. We'll be looking at our processes internally to make sure that we improve things in the future. But I think there's not much we would really change.
Indeed, and I think what's interesting about this is these rumors had been around for a while from the FT and there's real questions about sort of the auditor's role in all of this and the questionable sort of audits that had happened there. And there has been, I think, for quite some time through open banking, a number of ways to be able to prove that funds are in fact there and managed. One wonders if the FCA and others will start to look at those more automated solutions. But there's a question here from Melissa Stringer that, Simon, I wanted to ask to you, because again, I think given the nature of your business, there is also domestic versus international to keep in mind here. There's not everybody is domiciled in the UK. Have you found some consensus in how it's impacted people that were sort of in the UK trying to move money out and vice versa? And have you found some consensus on an alternative to Wirecard longer term? And do you think this will lead to them losing business in the long term, even though, as you say, that business in Newcastle appears to have tried to have done everything for its customers?
I think it's a good question. I think it comes down to what actual service you're trying to offer the customer. So if we're talking, the question from Melissa's, regarding international movement of money, we do that a lot for our business, but that doesn't touch Wirecard. It's a completely separate piece of the business. It's under our regulated entity. So, we wouldn't need to be looking around, but obviously we do have a travel product and people are outside of the country when they're using it. So we look to the internal business to see what other things that we can do to back that up. So Darren was mentioning around helping customers get money over the weekend. What we were able to do, it's very not fintech in many ways, but we have a cash service. We own a chain of cash bureaus. We were able to actually leverage that and deliver cash to people that were without funds, which, it's applying an old-fashioned method to a modern problem. And what we tried to do is look across the business and see where we were able to do that. So again, we're members of Faster Payment, so we were able to wire people money directly from their accounts to third-party accounts instantly. And when you're able to do that, it does kind of give the customers confidence that you're not reliant on a single point of failure. And I think we can all agree that's where this industry is traveling. As long as we can do that, then actually outages like this can be minimized as long as you can give that customer the confidence.
Indeed, and I think as we look at that, the outage is minimised, no single points of failure. Natalie, you mentioned, you were sort of in a position because of your issuer acquirer space to be able to have other people help you out. But I'm interested in this space of bank as a service. Wirecard is one of the original players that sort of enables this wave of fintechs to come to market by democratizing access to sort of card issuance. Do you think that bank as a service is going to be kind of a wide open opportunity for competitors now to Wirecard, or people that can even abstract that, like a Rails bank or somebody else who can help you deal with multiple processes? Or do you think the issue of that adding cost is going to mean that actually the opposite will happen, and organizations much like yourselves will go further down the stack, as we've seen Monzo and Revolut and others do, where they become direct members and then gradually direct clearing members and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think Wirecard became the go-to for many of us. They have powered, like you said, Monzo, Revolut, a lot of the fintechs that are very large and well known today. And as you grow older, you kind of grow away from Wirecard and you become your own issuer. One of the things I would highlight is in our situation, we are a platform. So we never came into this blockage of the e-money issuance. There was a little bit of e-money, but very, very little compared to the volumes, because we are a straight pass-through from people's banks and their funding cards. So all that money flows straight through. So it was never really locked up. You just couldn't spend because they blocked the card. So we never had this issue of, is my money, is my money safe? Yes, your money's safe because it's coming directly from your banks, and that was never part of the problem. We were just the platform through which it went through. However, we did have to explain to customers, your money is safe, although it was with their banks. But consumers are, just worried. Is my money safe? Wait, I'm using my card even if I have an underlying bank funding card. What does that mean for me? And you can understand that. This is people's financial lives, right? So you have to be very cognizant of that and take care.
And the payments industry, sort of does have its layers and its complexities, as we all well know. But it was interesting that, so the question from Paul Loberman here, who's
I have to get my charger. Sorry, this is consuming my battery. I'll be right back.
No worries, Natalie, you do that, and I'll ask this question to the other folks. This is the benefits of being live, everybody. So question from Paul Loberman. Apparently, social media was awash with customer stories about their difficulties. A crisis like this can also see many bad actors look to take advantage. Have you seen an increase during and post these events in sort of bad actors, fraud attempts, and how are you as brands starting to separate the reality from the fiction? I guess, Darren, I'll throw that to you first.
So, just to be really clear, so a lot of the social media kind of hubbubs come as a result of is more focused around the more consumer brands. We are a business product, so. In all honesty, the lack of an engagement through social is a blessing and a curse at this moment in time for us. So actually, when I'm thinking about bad actors, I'm actually thinking about fellow fintech professionals that are using this as an opportunity to almost put a boot in. And in all honesty, I held back on my response with some of these people, but they should really know better than that. I would never do that to a colleague, when actually something like this is completely out of your own control. So that, as far as bad actors are concerned, there's one or two, I'm not going to name them, but there's one or two that I will remember some of the comments that were made when actually we have no control over that situation. So yeah, I think the challenge is we had some fallout from some social media, some people on social media, but because we were tagged in the same way that some of the more consumer brands were, because people didn't have access to their money and they were literally looking for anyone to blame as part of this process. But yeah, that's it from Soldo's perspective.
No, that's interesting, Darren, that there is almost a glee when fintech has a hiccup in some corners, and that's quite sad because customers are affected and professionals are affected and working incredibly hard. And the one thing that I'm taking away from all of this is it appears that the FCA reacted incredibly quickly. MasterCard and Wirecard have reacted incredibly quickly, and these fintechs have had to do things over a weekend, and there's a lot of everyday heroes here, which there are in the large banks as well. I think many of us have worked in large banks and seen similar things that people won't realize, but it's always important to get that context, I guess.
Simon, could I just comment on the consumer side of bad actors, or
yes,
the ones? We had a multi-pronged, and we decided to hit social very hard because we knew that people were going to be asking questions. So we were tweeting, we had a blog post where we were updating people, and we also had our community site, for those who had more technical, wanted to have those discussions. I think the thing I loved the most was if somebody tweeted something negative or added it to our LinkedIn thread or put it on a community, we had so many advocates. We didn't have to answer. Advocates would be like, hey, back off. They're doing their best. Look at what they're trying to do. They're communicating. And I think it was that support for the good intent that we were putting in that was really wonderful. So for everybody who kind of, got immediately very upset or blamed Curve, for example, for being down, we had a lot of supporters who, in the consumer world were just remembering reminding them that that's not actually the case.
And this would have never been the case with traditional banks. And I think this is something FinTech can claim, is that there's something about the transparency and the communication and the lack of business speak and the dual nature of A, being clear with your consumer, and B, providing the technical detail for those that want to see it, that creates an advocacy that is quite unlike kind of anything that traditional banking had done. And maybe that's one of the big lessons here in terms of communicating. But do you think, Simon, especially I'm going to come to you, that there's still some work to be done to regain confidence? Do you think there will be a business impact? In a time when businesses were already struggling, given the economic environment post-pandemic?
I think inevitably there are always going to be some fallout for situations like this. But I think the way that the FinTech community has kind of pulled together and has collectively reassured the customers. I think what's interesting, I think someone picked up right at the beginning of the call that there were similar answers coming from Darren, Natalie and myself, is that we were all talking to the customers in the same way because we were all faced with the same challenges. And I think as long as you don't have third parties undermining, Darren mentioned some people that were taking advantage of social media, that we had the same as well, that actually customers should feel really confident about the situation. In fact, that they should understand why the FCA did this, and it sounds a bit repetitive, but it comes back to the fact that we have the regulation in this country and it allows us to do the products that we have and give customers the service that we have, and they should take confidence from that. It's going to be a little bit of rebuilding of trust. Just to go back to Natalie's point again about customer feedback, because we aren't a big bank, and most, I'm sure you guys are the same, we had people from engineering answer customer services. We had our COO was answering customer service calls. And every time you had a customer sending a message saying, chin up guys, we know it's not your fault, we're really appreciative of you coming back with the comments, goes to show that actually people do get it. And I think that kind of groundswell is what will kind of take us away from any concerns that the wider market might have. I think we can take it as an exciting time as much as anything, because we have the opportunity to show people why we do this and what customers benefit from.
Completely. I think in crisis, people remember the people that were there for them. And there's something to be said for that. I should mention, by the way, that question was from Adam Clark. So Adam, thank you for that question. Sorry, I forgot to mention you in the upfront there. There's another question from John Ryan, who said that the FT yesterday reported in a Wirecard article that the regulator is not keeping pace with the fast-moving payment industry. So A, do you agree with that? And I guess Darren, Simon, I'll throw to you first, maybe Darren. And then as a second thing, if the regulator is or is not keeping pace, are there things that the regulators should be looking at as they go forward?
It's a difficult answer. It's a difficult question to answer, I should say. I mean, in terms of are they keeping pace, I think what they did in this situation is they lumped us all in the same into the same boat. And I think that where we're at with this, we on a personal level, I think that the FCA maybe should have provided an ultimatum to Wirecard to actually resolve the issue, rather than just deciding to shut it down, and making that decision, which came a complete surprise to every one of the providers. If they'd have done that, then ultimately a lot of people wouldn't have suffered as consumers. And that, for me, is the bigger concern that we've got. I mean, yes, we have a service that goes down for a few days, which is obviously a problem, but the net impact of that is actually on those consumers. Now, for us, we're a business solution, but we also have 25,000 customers in the Italian market reliant on this that are where we're dispersing emergency aid to those people. So those people, for that period of time, weren't able to actually spend any money. So, you look at some of the other providers that have been impacted, and, could the decision have been a little bit more Could there have been better judgment placed on that decision? Yes, I think there could have been. And I think that there could have been more consideration of what the overall impact was. If we look at the overall impact now, DWP had to go and set a load of stuff up in order to make sure that some of those people could get access to emergency money. The fallout is significant, and it's not going to impact us in the long term, but it will impact some of those people. And I saw some horrendous stuff on social media where people were saying, you know, almost like suicidal because they didn't have money to spend. Now, that's awful. I mean, whichever way you cut it, that's awful. So, you know, I think that there does need to be some soul searching done by the FCA about their processes in the future to understand whether or not actually things could improve moving forwards. And I think there's definite improvements that could be made.
And I think credit to them where it's due, though they've responded quickly when the facts on the ground have changed. 4 days later to kind of turn that around. But there's also there's a question here about the kind of the auditor's role in all of this and the level of kind of confidence that was in the market around Wirecard as a result as a payments processor. And you know, for some time we've been talking about robo-regulation. I think it's confirmation.com has been around since 2011, right? The ability to prove that the funds are where you say they are is been around for a very long time. Simon, do you think that you know, there will be a sort of a not necessarily an inquiry, but you know, sort of a full-on investigation into the role of auditors in all of this, given, you know, kind of when it comes to the payment side of it and the actual funds, there's a lot of nuances and there's a lot of realities that are coming out, but the confidence thing is so crucial.
I think it's interesting because at the end of the day, it's important to make the distinction between the German Wirecard AG and the issuing bank that we all use, because they're two very different businesses. And I think it's clear that, well, what happened with Wirecard AG is an issue for Wirecard AG and for Ernst & Young. For those that remember the Enron days and Accenture, you know, we've seen it before. And the sad thing is the actions of those have had an impact on our customers, and that is what really annoys me. And I think Darren was saying is we need to be cognizant of the fact that the people that have suffered the most here are the customers. Mm-hmm. The auditors, whatever they were doing, who knows? I don't know what they were doing, so I can't comment. But I think it's important to ensure that as long as the businesses that are on this call and the businesses that operate in our space, we need to be sure that we are doing what we need to do from a regulatory perspective. That's all we can do. And I think the auditors, you mentioned about how quickly regulations changed and whether it can keep up. Arguably, actually, it's the audit side of things that needs to be quicker than the regulatory side of things, because we operate within constraints of regulation, and we all do that properly. Now, audit sits completely outside of what we do from a day-to-day basis. And I think many ways those two need to be brought back together closely, more than actually what we do.
Indeed. No, it's interesting, isn't it, that with open banking, just knowing where money is in theory very, very simple and easy to prove. Yeah. And I know Nick Cook and the guys at the at FCA Innovate are very keen for what those RegTech solutions could be. So maybe we see some advancements there. Natalie, I know you had some technical issues, so it's good to have you back.
I could hear you guys. You just couldn't see me.
Yeah, there we go. Well, it's good to have you back in full Technicolor. I guess we sort of covered there briefly that. Was the regulator moving fast enough, and are there any lessons learned there? Do you want to share your perspectives on this?
Yeah, I do. Look, I think there was a reason for why that happened so quickly, and it'll come out later, so we'll understand that a little more fully. We do what I think maybe got a little bit lost was consumer detriment, as we saw came out in the news, which is something that we are supposed to, the regulators are supposed to protect. And look, I'm glad they were able to sort things out over the weekend with Wirecard. I know that Wirecard UK was working hard to get everything back up and running. And I'm glad it's all behind us. For Curve, we made the decisions because we had no idea how long this might last. So the decisions we made were based on an unclear time frame for this. I really do think that actually we're going to be in a better place as a result of it. We're already in some of the redesign, for example, of refunds, which we talked earlier. We're going to make it a better process. We're taking the opportunity to create a new flow that we think is just going to be more flexible and new. So that's fintech for you, right? You just take something bad and you'll turn it around and find the gold dust in it.
I love that creativity, and actually, that creativity is, I think, what makes fintech so special. But I'm interested in kind of what advice you would give to an aspiring fintech right now, having been through all of this. And I guess, Natalie, I'll come to you first because you missed out on a few minutes.
Sure. Well, thank you. Look, we got through this because we remained calm under immense and extraordinary pressure. And just put our heads down and made a plan and just followed through with that plan with really no idea of what was going to come our way. But it literally was about being what a fintech is, innovative, coming up with solutions faced with a problem, figuring out how to think out of the box. If I need to do this in 3 days instead of 3 months, how am I going to do that? And I have to say, the partners that we work with, be it MasterCard, Investec, Checkout, GPS, because in FinTechs, there's tons of stuff in the back. They all worked with us all weekend to help us to get to what we needed to. And the plan was to be up and live as Monday morning. And we got there on Sunday night.
And I think this is the thing that people don't often realize is the amount of people and actors behind the scenes. You name check a mid-sized bank there that people know mostly for wealth management and 3 letters, GPS. We've obviously had the CEO on our breakfast show a couple of times, but company that most people have never heard of, and MasterCard that people have seen the logo, but they don't know what they do. It's sort of really interesting that the complexities of all of that and how many customers want to see. And
isn't it great? MasterCard is the technology company that they want to be because they are playing right along with all the fintechs. So it's great. Yeah.
And good for them. I guess same question to you, Simon, really. I mean, if somebody was going to start a fintech from scratch now, what advice would you give to them? I guess the thing I heard from you earlier, and I think maybe from Darren, is maybe don't have one payments processor and look for having multiple. But is that even possible within a small cost structure?
That's what it comes down to. It's taking on what you can actually deliver within your cost structure. So bin sponsorship is not going to go away. It's a great way that companies can come into the market and they can offer products quickly. And as Natalie said earlier, it's not necessarily going to be for the entirety of your existence. It can be a launch pad. It allows you to get out there to do what you need to do. We've got our own MasterCard issuance, so we can put the bins that we need to under our own umbrella. But when you're doing something like this, you need to understand the complexities of the entire value chain. So Natalie mentioned GPS there, and MasterCard and Investec. We're the same. We work with loads and loads of partners. And when you're new, you need to go out and you need to pick the right partners. And that comes down to, any good due diligence. That is the critical path for your business. Don't kind of be sold on any glossy brochures and great sales speak. Just do your homework. And if you pick the right partners, then you can actually come out of situations like this stronger. But as you grow and you scale, you want to look to see what you can internalize, whether that's, payment gateways, whether it's your own issuance. Doesn't matter what it is. As soon as you can bring it in, then it makes you better and stronger because you're in control of your own destiny.
Yeah, I think great advice and sage words, Simon. I guess, Darren, same question to you, but also with a bit of a twist. Where do you think this heads now? I mean, I guess you all mentioned it's been a crazy weekend. I don't think it's going to slow down for you anytime soon. So as you look to advice to fintechs, but also as you look to the next sort of week or so, what do you think comes next, and how do we start getting that momentum back?
Well, I'd say to aspiring fintechs to not be scared about going down the same route that all of us have gone down in terms of our maturation as a business. I think that, whilst this is obviously a scary situation, Wirecard will come back from this. Share prices already bounced back here for the AG business. The UK entity's going to survive this. They might sell off some of the assets like the US and so on and so forth, but it will still be around and it will still continue to operate. So I wouldn't be scared from that. I mean, if we look at the track record of the likes of Monzo, Revolut, and everyone else that's already used them as a platform, they've got a solid track record, and there are a multitude of other players in that space that are circling the companies that are remaining. I think in terms of, for us as a business at least, we've already completed our BIN migration from Wirecard to MasterCard. So Wirecard is no longer part of our supply chain as of now. So where does it go from there? Well, it's something that we were planning to do anyway. We would have done it in August. All it does is it means that we can now focus on what else do we need to improve within our existing stack. And what other things do we need to internalize? How do we need to move that forward? So there's a lot of things that it gives us an opportunity. Now that we've got through that, the one thing we've not done is we've not had the 60 days worth of we test. We've done 4 days and it's just happened. Now, normally that is a no-no in any business to do something like that. But we've re-platformed in the space of 4 days, and I think that to do that is is testament to the support that we've had from all of our supply chain as part of this process, but also our internal team. I mean, our techs and our devs are they've got some big bags under their eyes this week as a result of all of the work that's been done. But they've knocked it out of the park. So yeah, I think the future's rosy for fintech. I really do. I think this is just a really unfortunate consequence of something that's some poor auditing that's taken place in Germany for the parent business of a profitable business in the UK.
I think that's a really neat summary, and I guess the nuance that often gets missing again as these things appear as headlines, kind of flying through the mainstream press. I guess, Simon, you mentioned that a couple of times in some of those nuances, but what do you think is kind of next for fintech and and your business as well? I think you mentioned some similar nuances.
Yeah, so I mean, we've always looked to, as we've scaled up and we've acquired other businesses and we've kind of reached out into different markets, we've always looked at being able to offer people choice. So I agree with Darren. I don't think this is the end for Wirecard, far from it. I think the UK business, as was NBS, still has an awfully big part to play in fintech in the UK and the wider market, and we're keen to carry on working with them where we do. I think what's important is that everyone it's a bit of perspective is needed, I guess. We do what we do because we want to give people great products. We do what we want to do because customers deserve to have choice. And as a business, what we're trying to do is ensure that we can give that choice to the widest possible market. So whether that's looking at different BIN sponsors, whether it's doing ourselves, whether it's looking into alternative payment methods, all these things are literally only able to be done in fintech when you get the flexibility to look at these things. You mentioned big banks earlier. We've all worked at big banks. I think one of the reasons that we were all so good at communicating with our customers this weekend was because the entire business was on it. I said people in engineering, I had people from finance, I had people from every single department logging into Freshdesk, answering customer queries. Now, if you were a big tier one bank, that just doesn't happen. There's big walls inside. So as a business, what we've learned from this is just the importance again of that communication to customers. As long as you are honest with your customers, with everything that then the trust and the credibility will remain, and we'll all go on to be a stronger industry, I think.
Isn't that interesting how I think there is definitely, I've seen it, and I think Darren, you alluded to it, there are some quarters of the traditional financial services sector that's taken more than a little glee in fintech having some trouble. And actually, it's in the hard times that the trust is really being won by the fintechs and bled away from the larger banks who would typically be more stale and more corporate in how they communicate things through different channels.
Yeah, I mean, just as an example of that, I mean, I spent most of the weekend on Twitter and I was responding personally to customers of ours that were actually kind of like didn't know what was happening. So, you wouldn't get that from most of the big banks or any big bank, I'd say. So, we want to make sure our customers come through this and they don't just trust us, but they continue to love us, which is what we want moving forwards.
There are definitely lessons there, I think, for those larger organizations. And Natalie, I'm going to give you last word on this one. As you gaze into the crystal ball of the next few hours, what do you think comes next for you and for fintech?
I mean, I'm sure it's the same for Simon and Darren, but at Curve, we feel invincible now. Like, we feel like we can do anything. We feel so good. So, very proud of the teams and what we've pulled through. And, exactly that. We're excited now to bring on the next thing because now we know we can do it.
I love the sound of that. Well, that neatly wraps up today's discussion. I think I want to thank you all for joining me. So that before everybody logs off, can you explain where people can find out more about you and your company, starting with Natalie?
Curve.com.
I like
Go
it.
ahead. You can learn everything about us.
And Simon?
Equalsmoney.com or faireffects.com. We've got both.
And Darren?
Just soldo.com.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And thank you for watching. If you like what you've heard and seen, then do subscribe to our podcast and don't forget to leave us a review on those podcasts. Share the show and share us on LinkedIn as well. And if you know somebody who loves FinTech, then pass along this show, pass along this LinkedIn. Make sure that they do, because this is you can tell we're real FinTech insiders. We like getting underneath the nuance a little bit. And please do watch our daily breakfast show here on LinkedIn. Follow David Breer to never miss the UK one, and follow the 11FS account for the US show, which is the surprise hit of the summer for me. If you've not been watching Sam's show, it's incredible. David's is too. But I don't know. I'm pulling for Sam on this one. Alrighty. Sorry about that, David. If you have any suggestions or feedback as well, you can find us on social or just search for 11FS or email podcast@11fs.com. Thank you so much, and goodbye for now.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you.